Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in Salesforce FX Hour. Today we are going to talk about the best practice for user management, and we have a Shell with us from the Salesforce team. So let me hand it over to her for her introduction and the presentation. Hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much for having me this morning. Or if you're watching this in the future, thanks for listening. And wherever you are in the world, if you're on the East Coast like me, or it's very early for you on the West Coast, or you're someplace else in the world where it's evening, thank you so much for spending your Friday with me. And so, if we have not met yet, I am a Senior Director of Product Management at Salesforce and Platform, and I cover the entire user access product area. So that's anything under the user section in setup, as well as setup audit trail, delegated admin, as well as the org-wide defaults, sharing settings, restriction rules, all the things like that. What I'll do is I'm going to go through some best practices. Then we're going to talk about features that are coming in, some that are here in summer 24, as well as what's coming on the roadmap. And then I'm happy to answer some questions. So just one quick mention is please only make purchasing decisions based on features that are generally available today, because I will be covering some roadmap. So you have probably heard that we recommend you use a permission set-led security model. And we have also heard that you're confused at what belongs on a permission set versus a profile. We've also heard your demand for best practices for granting permissions to your users. One thing I wanted to mention before I get into best practices and to answer some of these questions is we are delaying the end of life of permissions on profiles. We had announced about a year ago that we were going to end of life spring 26 permissions on profiles. However, we still recommend you operate in a permission set led model. We will continue to enhance more on permission sets and permission set groups than profiles, although occasionally you will see enhancements on profiles. So let's cover the first question. What belongs in a permission set and what belongs in a profile? So your permission sets should have your system permissions, your object and field permissions, your connected app access, your Apex classes and Visualforce pages, your record types, not your defaults, your apps, similar thing, not your defaults, tab settings and custom permissions, as well as other things within the setup and the access area. Now your profiles. Profiles were never going away. So I just want to be clear, it was permissions on profiles that were going to end of life. So profiles will still exist. The user is required to have a profile. And so here's what should be in a profile. So use the minimum access profile where you can. It does not exist for all license types yet, although that is something that we will have in the future. It should contain your defaults. Consider your profile the one-to-one between access, between user and access when a user can only have one. So your defaults, such as record types and apps, your page layout assignment, and your login hours and IP ranges. These are the items that will be staying in profiles. And let's talk a little bit about why and what some of the benefits are for permission sets. So one of the biggest benefits of permission sets is they are reusable. You can reuse them because you can assign them to multiple users. A user can have more than one, as well as they can be reused in permission set groups, which is what we'll talk about when we talk about how to structure these. They are also much easier to deploy and package rather than profiles. And I touched on this before, but you can assign directly to a user or indirectly through a permission set group, which is what I mean when I say PSG. So let's talk a little bit how to structure your permission sets. Your permission set should be what I consider task specific, or what we call in product a job to be done. So your permission set should encompass all of the necessary object, field, user permission access, as well as, record types, tabs, and things to complete a specific task. So something like account and contact access. And now you can put all of the access in here, and we'll talk about how to minimize what a specific persona gets through permission set groups. Let me see, I think there might have been a question. here. Oh, no. Let me see. And let's talk a little bit about the benefits of permission set groups. So one of the biggest benefits of permission set groups versus a profile is a user can have more than one. I know when I was a customer, and so if you don't know, I actually came from the customer side, is I remember before permission set groups, and before we were living in a world where we were operating with a permission set led security model, I would have my manager come to me and say, hey, you see those two users over there? They're going to be doing sales and support. And then it was up to me to kind of figure out how to create what I like to call a Franken profile, which is a hodgepodge mix of what was in that sales and support profile to give those two users the set of access. And it just caused a giant proliferation of profiles. And so one of the benefits of permission set groups is a user can have more than one. So if you have a sales permission set group, and a support permission set group, your user could technically have both. There's a lot of benefits. Permission set groups really represent what we consider RBAC, which is role-based access control. And there's a lot of benefits from operating that way rather than just having these little sets of access assigned to users. Also, if you've ever seen there's a status field on permission set groups, that actually does the access calculation for you. So one of the challenges we had before permission set groups for customers that were using a lot of permission sets, if they would have a ton of permission sets assigned to one user, that user would experience extreme slowness because every time they were doing anything, it was running through all of the access of all the permission set assignments. Permission set groups calculate that access beforehand, so it becomes much more performant than using individual permission sets assigned to a user. Now, one of the other things is you're able to mute in a permission set group. And what that means is if you have a permission set, such as, let's say, account and contact access that, let's say, has the delete capability for accounts and contacts, and you want maybe your managers to have that, but not your individual sales reps, you're able to mute that permission for that permission set group. So let's talk a little bit how to structure your permission set groups. So you're going to want to make your permission set groups for different personas or a larger job to be done. So your permission set group should encompass all of the permission sets necessary for a persona to do their job. And then you mute out any permissions that the persona does not need for their job. Like we talked about, like muting out the delete or muting out like a create or something like that. You can also mute out user permissions. You can mute out tab access. You can pretty much mute anything that's in a permission set. And so typically your permission set groups will represent a persona, or it could be a larger job to be done. I've seen a lot of customers do create a permission set group for general Salesforce access. That is a base level access that every single user type needs that you can assign. And then they have additional persona based permission set groups for additional access that their different personas will need. So let's talk about how you can get started. So how do you get started? How do you start if you're mainly using profiles today, or you're coming into an org that's using some permission sets, some profiles, some permission set groups? I think it's really important to understand what your users actually need. And there is a great thing by Mike Gerholt from the admin marketing team here at Salesforce, and it's called SABWA, and that's Salesforce Administration by Walking Around. And you can do this virtually as well. But I think it's really taking the time to understand what your users need access to based on their job and actually having those conversations. And it's a great way to connect with your users. And so really also thinking about your role-based access control benefits and also what a role actually needs access to. And when I say role, I don't mean like role in the role hierarchy, but more like a persona or a job or like a department. So something like as a finance department user, I want to be able to manage all opportunities and sales orders so that I can process customer orders and commissions. So I think of thinking things in a user story format or what a person or type of person needs to do will help you. And then you can figure out what the permissions are that a this type of user actually needs. And then you can also think about things from a process permission set. And so something like, as a Salesforce user, I want to be able to use reports to view customer information so that I can understand and help our customers. So maybe you have more of a process permission set or permission set group that's covering reports and dashboards. So those are some of the best practices. I wanted to see if there were any questions before I jump into some of the summer 24 features and also covering some roadmap.
And
Okay. So let's talk about what's coming in summer 24 and how these features can help you. And so the first feature I want to talk to you about is user access policies. So once you've created your permission sets, and oh, was there a question? Let me see. Oh, okay. And so user access policies. So what this feature allows you to do, so once you've created your permission sets and your permission set groups, or maybe you're already operating in this way and you're deploying permission sets and permission set groups, and you're trying to get all of these permission sets and permission set groups assigned to users. You don't want to have to manually do it. You don't want to have to export your user table and pull all the IDs. It's a lot of work. What user access policies allow you to do is to set criteria about your users. And that criteria can be attribute-based, meaning fields on the user record, or it can be entitlement-based, meaning users are in a specific profile or role or have a specific permission set or a specific license. And you can automatically apply access. So, for example, if you have users that are, let's say, in the sales profile, and then you only want to put people that are in like the sales apps department, you can do that and that are active. And then you want to apply a number of permission sets and permission set groups and public groups and queues, you can do that. What's also really special about user access policies is you can activate a policy. And now that this is generally available, you can have up to 200 active user access policies. And you can set this to fire on user create, user update, or user create and update to automatically apply access. And that access can be permission sets, permission set groups, permission set licenses, managed package licenses. Those are the licenses from the App Exchange, as well as public groups and queues. And now we're also starting to connect user and set up audit trail. And what I mean by that is there is a new feature that we released alongside user access policies that you can only see from user access policies today. However, we are going to expand upon that. And what that allows you to do is see the recent user access changes. And so you'll be able to see right from user access policies when that policy ran and which users it impacted and what was added or removed. The next one is the user access summary. So one of the main pieces of feedback that we got from customers, and one of the reasons why we delayed the end of life, was we felt that we needed to improve a lot of the admin experience on managing permission sets and understanding permission sets. And the big piece of feedback was like, okay, now my users have these permission sets and permission set groups. What do they actually have access to do? And it was somewhat of a mystery. And so now in the summer release, you'll see a button on all of your users that says View Summary. When you click on that, you can see all of the user permissions a user has access to, all of the object and field permissions, custom permissions, and public group and queue membership. And I see there might be a question. Sorry, you had your hand raised. Sorry, I didn't see that for some reason. Are there best practices that customers should follow in the transition to profiles? My question from this larger orgs are never keeping track of which profiles have what permissions. So there's no track of how many permission sets to create instead of those profiles. That is a common piece of feedback that we hear, and I will show you some mock-ups that we're thinking of about on ways to help you actually do this. So once we get through a little bit of the roadmap, I will show you some mocks that we're thinking about to get your feedback. Then the next feature is a permission set and permission set group summary. So this was in beta previously, and we've moved this to an improved UX, as well as we've added custom permissions. So what this does is on any permission set and any permission set group, you'll see a button that says view summary. And this summarizes which, from a permission set perspective, which permission set groups this permission set is used in, which was a huge challenge for admins to understand. It shows you which user permissions are granted to this permission set, which object permissions, field permissions, and we added custom permissions. Now, if you're on a permission set group, this will show you which permission sets are included, and then show you which user permissions, object permissions, field permissions, and custom permissions. And the summary on the permission set group will show you the net of access minus the muting. And now there's been an age-old question that has been asked by customers for a long time, and that is, where is my public group used? And so while the public group summary doesn't answer every single question, one day we hope it will, but this answers the top 5 areas that customers are using public groups based on the data that we looked at. So from any public group, you can click on View Summary and you can see where that public group is used and sharing rules, both owner-based and criteria-based. You can see which report and dashboard folders the public group is used in. We can see if it's included in other public groups, as well as you can see which list views that the public group is granting access to by object. Now, something else, this won't necessarily help in your transition from profiles to permission set groups, but it will help you from managing in the context of least privilege. And so what we've done, we've heard from a lot of customers that they wanted to give some users the ability to freeze users or the ability to just view login history on a user, and they would have to give the full manage users permission to do that. You should no longer need to do that. You can give these permissions independently. You can give either freeze users or monitor login history. But please note, users who have the manage users permission today will also get the freeze users and the monitor login history, but they can be given independently. And one thing we've also heard, and this touches on to one of the things that we heard consistently as we've been talking about, using a permission set led security model, is your documentation doesn't necessarily say that. And so we've made a lot of investments in our documentation in the help and training section. About 3 weeks ago, we re-released all of our documentation that helps with troubleshooting, talks about when you should use a profile, when you should use a permission set, some best practices there. So a lot of what I covered in this presentation is also in our documentation, as well as we've introduced huge troubleshooting guides for object and record access issues. Let me see, I think there's a question. Will the permission allow a non-admin user to freeze Salesforce admin users? Yes, it doesn't let the user, it doesn't necessarily differentiate which user a user could freeze, although we are looking at adding the ability to freeze users to delegated admin, and I'll talk about that when we talk about roadmap. Are there any other questions before I get into roadmap? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about roadmap, and then I'm going to take a quick second to pull up some mocks to get your feedback. And so you'll be seeing the future, and you'll be able to give me some really good feedback. So just a quick recap on what we released in summer 24 is user access policies are now generally available. You have summary on user, permission set group, and public group, as well as granular permissions for freezing users and monitoring login history. So winter 25, This is what we're hoping to deliver. We're still, just so you know where we are, we're about 3/4 of the way through developing for Winter 25 right now. We're continuing improving the admin experience for user access. And on the user access summary, you will be able to see where a user is getting access from. So it's great that you're able to see a user has all these permissions, but how are they getting access? You'll be able to tell that right from the user access summary. You will also have an access summary and object manager. The user list view is moving into Lightning, which also opens up the capabilities for inline edit. We're also delivering an improved experience for managing public group membership. No more dueling box that takes you forever to find the right user. And some of you already mentioned you're in very large orgs, and you've probably seen some performance issues on that page. We're also going to start introducing some tools to help you troubleshoot for object crowd and field level security, and we're going to absolutely expand on that. And then general enhancements. One of the things like that somebody actually came up to me at, I think it was either TDX or Dreamforce last year, that was like, when are you going to add a description field on public groups and queues? And I was like, we don't have that. And I realized we don't have that. Now we do. So the development's actually finished for that one. So I can confidently say you will get that in Winter 25. Um, so spring 25 and beyond. So this isn't just spring. So think of this is like spring 25, summer 25, and even some into winter 26, which would essentially be a year from now. So improved admin experience. You will get edit access and object manager, and I'll show you what that's going to look like. Inline edit on user list view, user, permission set group, public group, queue, and role, all moving into Lightning. Access compare, I'll show you what that's going to look like. We're introducing some troubleshooting and analytics tools. Also general enhancements, clone user and field history tracking on user is happening. Development is underway. It's just a large effort. So we're still probably 3 releases away from putting that in your hands, as well as we are giving some delegated admin some much needed love. And so from delegated admin, we're looking at adding freeze users, the ability to manage queues, as well as the ability to edit a manager field. But we'd also love to know, what else would you want in delegated admin? And I see a question coming up, and I'm happy to take any questions. Let's see. Clone users and access compare is great. Love it. Yes, we're really excited. And I'll pull those mocks up in 2 seconds and share that with you. But I'm happy to take any questions. Well, I'm going to actually stop sharing while I do that, because I just need to open up another application. Give me 1 second here. I'm happy to take any questions. It doesn't have to be my presentation. I can try to answer questions like for anything in my future area. I can't guarantee I will know, but I'm happy to follow up with you and find out if I don't know.
So if you have any question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question directly.
This might be more of like understanding the solution is like some of the use case I usually see is like business users need to add permissions to their team members, but we don't want to give them more access, like adding permission and so on. So how do we solve that use case? Because if there are like so many users and we only have maybe 1 or 2 admins, so how do we solve that problem? Maybe that this.
So you're talking about on the screen when you add users to queues?
No, so let's say we want to add any permission set to a user or specific permission to a user.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have business users like supervisors. They onboard like a lot of users every day. So, but like we don't allow them to add permissions because that's more enhanced access level. But they always request to have that access. So how do we solve that? Yeah.
So I'm not sure I'm following the question. So you are creating a lot of users and you want to make sure, I'm sorry, I'm not 100% following your question.
Sure. Okay. So we only have one admin, let's say,
Okay, got it. Yep.
and we have almost 600, 700 users. Out of
Uh-huh.
that, like there are 10, 15 supervisors. So now, as an admin, like every day, onboarding a lot of users is a difficult task, but we still can do it. But the supervisors are asking more elevated permissions to add permissions to their team members. But we don't want to give that because it will cause any security concerns. So how do
I
we
got
go
it.
about it?
Okay. So you're looking for, so delegated admin allows you to do some of that. So you could, in theory, make those supervisors delegated admin and you can set for which users. It can only be based on role today. And that's something else I want to improve. But you can say this user can manage users in these roles and they can assign only these permission sets.
Got it. Okay.
And you can do permission set groups. You can do public groups as well. Queues is not there yet, but you should definitely check out delegated admin.
Cool. Thank you.
Let's see. Other than the idea exchange, what's good ways to get suggestions to the product teams? So I would say idea exchange is the way, like if you have product suggestions, a lot of product managers have groups on the Trailblazer community. But I'm happy to pass on feedback if you want to send me any feedback for any other product teams, I'm happy to pass it on to some of my colleagues. But I do know there's a huge effort internally to look at idea exchange ideas and feedback. I will give you that there are over 6,000 ideas for my feature area. I try to respond to anything with more than like a few hundred points. I try to update and read and respond to comments, even if we're not doing them right now. But I know some of my colleagues have like 10, 20,000 ideas. But I would say if there is a if there's something that's specific that you want me to pass on, I'm happy to do that. You can just email me at cfeldman@Salesforce. Can we lock non-admin users to update any fields on user record by not writing examples? Some of my users in sales have removed the manager value on user records or update other details, which makes yes, so there isn't the concept of field level security on the user record today. We are actually doing a lot of performance enhancements to user right now. That is one of the user is actually the oldest entity that Salesforce has. So we're modernizing it. And one of the things, so that feature was actually released before the concept of field level security. So just if you haven't been around long enough to not have field level security, the user record has been. So that's something I want to bring in the future. I don't know exactly where that's going to fit on the roadmap yet. That is because we need to finish some of these performance enhancements before we can do that. So yes, validation rules is unfortunately the best way to do this right now. I'm sorry. But yes, I'm aware of it and I'm sorry, it's just really old, but we are modernizing the user record. Okay, let me pull up features here to show you. And these are all mocks right now, but some of this is already being developed. Let's see. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So in the winter release, and I'm pretty confident, forward-looking statement because we're still actively developing this right now, but you will have a summary. You will see a new section in object access where you'll be able to see which permission sets, which permission set groups, and which profiles are granting access to that record. Now, in the future, this is more like spring, summer release next year, is you'll have the ability to mass edit here. No need to go into every single permission set and do that. So that is something else that we are working towards. And the next feature is on the public group summary. So eventually these summary pages will become the records for these groups. But on the public group summary, if you've never seen the screen to add and remove members for public groups. I don't know if it's the worst experience I own, but it's up there. And so what you'll have the ability to do is to add members right from here. This is using the list view format. You'll have a search. You'll be able to create list views. You can also add other public groups, roles, and things like that. So it's providing a much better experience as well as also a more scalable experience. And I see a couple of questions. Let's see. Can you provide the pros and cons using the muting option? So I would say the only con right now is muting only applies to that specific permission set group. And remember, permissions are always additive. However, what that means is if you mute, let's say, deleting accounts from a permission set group, and that user gets assigned another permission set group or separately a permission set to delete accounts, they will have the ability to delete accounts. I would say that is the biggest con to muting right now. It's one of those features that was before my time, and I wish I would have started at Salesforce a year and a half earlier because I would have made this feature a little bit different. However, we are looking at bringing true ABAC, which is attribute-based access control, to the platform. I don't have any timelines on that, but we are, doing some experimenting and researching right now on how we might do that, where you can have essentially org level deny rules to say, these users can never do this thing. These users can never get access to this data, which I think is really what you want, is to have some sort of global rule. So I would say that is the biggest con right now. And I'm sorry it is that way, but we're going to do things to improve it. Let's see. Okay. And let's see. So let's talk about access comparisons. So what we've heard from a lot of customers is you have a user who says to you, why can't I do something and other user can? And you're like, well, that's a loaded question, right? Because that could be a lot of different reasons. So we started thinking, what if we could give you the ability to compare users, and you can compare user permissions, object permissions, and see what's different and the same? What if you could do something like that? Or what if you could compare permission sets or permission set groups or profiles? And I think that answers the question before, is how do I figure out what do I need to create? And so starting to think about, like, how can we help use a tool like this to compare access across all of your profiles to help you determine what are the permission sets and permission set groups that you need to create. This is a little bit further out. I'd say this is probably about a year out. We have not started work on this yet, but we are actively getting feedback. So we'd love to know what you think about a feature like this. Let's see. Okay, these new tools are awesome and so helpful. I'm excited. Which release plans, inline edit capability, compare access, updating public groups is tedious. Yes, I know. I'm sorry. We're fixing it. Access compare would be a huge one. Okay, great. And then, so I guess my question is, so if we gave you the ability to like compare a couple of users, comparing permission sets to each other, comparing permission set groups, maybe, understanding your profiles a little bit better, what questions would you want to answer with this feature? Because I want to make sure we know what questions you typically ask and that you want to answer with this feature, so we make sure we cover that. Because I'm trying to determine what all of your jobs to be done are so we can prioritize them. Well, if you think of any, let me know. You can always email me, cfeldman@Salesforce. What is missing from a user permission in order to do something? Why can one user do something Salesforce cannot, or troubleshooting similar issues? Yep. Okay. And Brian, I have a question for you. So when you're getting typically like when like Joe can do something, but Mary cannot, let's say in that example, is that typically more a permission level issue, or is that typically a record access issue for you, or is it a combination? Examples have been permission based. Okay. See. Now, let's talk about Permission Analyzer. So some of you may have heard of an app called User Access and Permissions Assistant, which is an app that my team put out on the App Exchange. And well, if you've ever read the reviews, it's not great. And I would say these are one of the other things I wish we would have scaled better. But we did what we could do at that time. And what I've realized is we just need to bring some of this functionality in core. And so really what we've heard from a lot of admins is they just really struggle understanding user permissions, and that's totally understandable. And when I say user permissions, I mean system and app permissions. And why do you struggle? It's because in the last like 4 releases, we've introduced almost 400 new user permissions, and we expect you as admins to understand all of them. And that's just not a fair ask, right? And so what we're thinking about is how could we show you all of your user permissions in your org in one place and help you understand what it does, which users have access to it, and then which permission sets, permission set groups, and profiles are granting access, and then your full user list. That is what we're starting to think about, is how we could bring some insight to this. And then something similar for object permissions. Yes, we have the object access, but what we've heard from customers is you just want to see the full list and you want to know, like you just want to be able to come here and just see which permission set groups, and profiles are granting access. And wanted to see what you think about this feature. Let's see. Let's see. Compare access and permission honors will be good for new admins when you start getting to know an org. Yes, I would say so. I would say these are very good for folks who are not good with SOCL. A lot of the experiences, which some of you, I know this is a lot of folks are coming from Apex hours, which you probably are very good with SOCL. But hopefully maybe it'll free you up so your admins aren't always asking you to run SOCL and developer console for them. Let's see. I think we'll answer the questions to admin. Do I have unnecessary? Yes, that is one of the big things we have heard. One of the other things is we've heard, yeah, I'm operating in a permission set-led security model. Now I have a proliferation of permission sets. And so we're thinking access compare, and something else we're thinking about, which is not, I don't have a mock-up for yet, and this is probably, I would say like a year and a half away, is when you're creating a new permission set, helping you understand if a similar permission set already exists and redirecting you there. There are other permissions such as Apex classes that should be part of the summary. Yes, we've heard Apex, Flow. Those are things that are on the roadmap. Apex and Flow are not available in the summary yet, although my team has the path forward to do this. It's more of we just couldn't get to all of it in one release. We'll be able to report export on the permission comparisons in the future. Please said to use SQL queries over multiple objects. That is something that we're looking at. So we've actually developed these APIs are internal only right now, but we are looking at a path to make the APIs that we've created accessible externally. There's just some security work we need to do. But yes, that is the long-term plan. And any other questions? Will there be a way to identify business users accidentally got an admin permission, like manage users or modify all data? So if you have event monitoring, you can do this today. So what you can do is you can set up a transaction security policy and critical permissions like manage users and modify all data to alert or block when specific users get a permission like manage users or modify all data. And I can send the details on our permissions at event. For new admins, will these setup navigation become confusing once they are all interrelated to users and permissions? I would love to hear how you think this might be confusing because we're trying to make admins less confused. And if you want to talk about it offline, I'm happy to do that as well. C. Feldman at Salesforce, if you want to email me. And if you think there's a way, like something we're doing is going to be confusing to new admins, I want to hear about it because these so far have tested pretty well with new admins. Does the summary also show record access? If you're talking about the user access summary, not yet. It shows public group and queue membership. And we've been thinking about what we want to show on the user access summary for record access. We were thinking maybe record accounts by object, but trying to show a list of records a user has access to, depending on the user, depending on the organization, that could lead to some performance issues. So we're looking at what would make the most sense there, and would love your feedback, Barbara, if you have any suggestions on what you want to see there. Perhaps show public groups. So we do show the public groups. So basically sharing roles that impact that user because they're in a role or a public group that's part of a sharing role. That's something that we could look at as well. That's a good idea. The password achieve record access by selecting an object, then pressing a button to show a list of users that could see it. That's something we've also been thinking about. So we're still noodling on what the experience could be there, but I totally hear you that we need a better way to do this. So I hear you. We're looking at it, and I would love to come back in a couple of months when I have some more experiences that we're working towards. But we are committed, and this is a multi-year effort to improve the experience here. So basically, you're seeing everything that you're seeing now, all the experiences that I showed for summer. That was essentially one release worth of work. You'll have a lot more for winter, and so we're trying to deliver immense value every release, but we can't get to everything in one release. Any other questions, comments? Feedback? I'm a big believer in all feedback as a gift. And I'll put my email address in the chat in case any of you think of anything. Some companies, does user onboarding through SSO like Okta? Will user access? Yes, it does. And that's actually one of the main use cases. And so what we've heard from like Okta, SailPoint, and some of these identity solutions that you can select a profile or one permission set, but how do you have that full breadth of access? And so what a lot of customers were doing is they were either managing some sort of table outside of Salesforce to map and then insert through some sort of integration using like MuleSoft, Informatica, etc. Or they were managing like a custom metadata type and using Flow and Apex. So yes, this will work when the user is created or updated through Okta. But just one thing to note is that Okta is very synchronous. User access policies are asynchronous, as you can imagine from all of the updates that are happening, especially when you're doing mass imports of users. So everything is asynchronous there, so it won't be as real time, but it's within seconds. So the user will get access. Yeah, so something actually I was talking to one of my architects about, Barbara, that's a really good point. Is so on the back end, we essentially do access checks to see how a user's actually getting access to a specific record. And we're actually looking at how could we make this accessible to our customers and visible in a way that would make sense to you. So we're actually actively looking at that. So be able to tell you how this user, or what is actually passing, what is making a user able to see or edit this record. So we actually have that internally. It's just a matter of how we get this out to our customers. So that touches more on how we take some of these internal APIs we have and make them external. So that's something I'm actually working on with my architect right now. No timeline for that because that involves a little bit more security work that we need to do. But yes, I'm right there with you. Well, I hope this session was everything you hoped for. And if you ever have any feedback, you can always reach out to me. I put my email address in the chat. Always happy to have conversations with customers and partners. And I'm always trying to listen. We can't get to everything in one release, but we're trying to deliver value and we're always open to feedback. So if something's not working well, I would love to hear from you. If something is working well and you are using our features, would love to hear from you as well. So please let us know how we can help. Thank you again for having me. It's been wonderful. And thank you for your time. I know everybody's really busy. I know some of you, it's very late for where you are. So thank you so much for taking the time with me here today.